Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cape Town. Great to be here. We've expanded the panel a little bit because we thought we needed a bit more of a cross-representation from different places. So I'll introduce the people that are up here. I've also asked Hank to join us from Cogizer. Hank, if you're out there, this is optional. I know you're a little bashful and shy, but if you'd like to join us, we'd appreciate your wisdom also. Far corner, we have Mr. Ballin, family firm, been involved in the pulse business for 4 generations now. Greg Simpson, same. I've known Greg for 30 years and good friend and been involved in the pulse industry. One of the leaders, his family started a pulse plant in Saskatchewan in the 70s, I believe. Yeah, 79, there you go. We've got Atef, who I met 5 minutes ago. And he's going to share some wisdom about North Africa and the Middle East. And where's Albert? He was at the back with us. He didn't make it up. There he is. Come on up, Albert. So, new normal, green lentils. New normal, few things we can talk about. I guess there's some different slides up. First one is just some pricing, so you can see what's happened to lentil pricing over the last 4 years. And I guess 3 years. So now we're kind of at the lower end of the market. That tells you that prices will probably go up, I suspect. But anyways, that's a simplistic view, but the lentil pricing, I guess, is good value at the moment. What we're going to do this morning is I'll maybe get Greg to make some comments initially about production prospects in Canada, where things are at now, what he sees, and then we'll go around the different regions and look at some things we should be aware of in certain markets. I guess a couple of points about the new normal I want to make before we get started. Canada had a wreck in 2010. That was the new normal in 2010. 2013, we had probably the best crop we have ever had in Western Canada since we started cultivating 100 years ago. Phenomenal yields. So we had a wreck and a record crop 3 years apart. So what's the new normal? We're not sure. New normal in Canada is freight logistics. We've become an oil exporting country in a major way. Oil is moving in rail cars, and so grain is no longer the freight of choice by the railroads. So that's a complication and a wrinkle for us. So it's not just production we need to talk about. We also need to consider the logistics and the challenges we have as an exporting country getting product out of 2,000 miles to port and to markets. Greg, some comments about what you see for the coming year in Canada and Canadian production.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So I think we have to back up the story to last year's record production. We had what I call a convergence of 3 significant things. First of all, the research and development in agronomics, new varieties, crop protection products, management. The second one would be the advancement in mechanical equipment now, what we're using for precision seeding equipment, precision placement of fertilizers. All of this equipment has had a significant impact on our ability to be producers, good producers. And then finally, last year, some of the best weather conditions one could ask for, even though in the middle of it, as a farmer, you wouldn't have felt that way with the amount of rainfall we had. As a result, in the Western Prairies, our total production was 50% larger than normal, some 80 million metric tons of production. And that's really where this problem starts, is we normally have a transportation system that moves around 34 million metric tons for export. So I asked the question to quite a few people in the logistics departments around Western Canada, people in the know, and we estimate there's going to be a total of 20 to 25 million metric tons of all crops carried over in the prairies. And so with that, we have a lot of grain in store in the prairies that isn't going to move simply because we don't have the ability to transport it all to market quickly. And so that was one of the drivers for sure in terms of the shift in production. Canola prices and wheat prices are down from what they have been in the last couple of years. So that, as a proverb says, the cure for high prices is high prices. So now we're going to see a shift into more green lentil production as the green lentils are moving well, providing pretty good cash flow for farmers. And I think one other main point I want to make is fertilizer costs have gone up significantly. And so with the increase of fertilizer costs, farmers can seed pulses, in particular lentils, and they can keep their fertilizer costs under control. So that's one of the drivers for the overall increase in lentils. But specifically in greens, as you can see in the production figures there, we're not going to see a significant increase in green lentil production in Laird's, and that's largely because the price has not been high enough in comparison to red lentils. So red lentils are going to go up significantly, and large green lentils are going to remain static. And the figures that I have here is Laird's will be around 775,000 acres, and 2014 we're forecasting 767,000 acres. So with that, we're going to probably, under normal yield conditions, see a drop in production from 575,000 tons of production down to 481,000 tons in green Laird's. So I'll stop there because I'm
Maybe
sure
you
there's
could
more
comment, Greg,
questions.
about the carryover of the green lentils. You mentioned a large carryout of grains in Canada. Does that also the case for lentils proportionally, or are we getting tight on green lentils?
Well, I think the question is how are we going to emerge out of this recent poor transportation through the winter? A lot of people were short in hopper car supply. Over the entire season, bulk hopper cars were some 60,000 cars behind order for both railroads. So that's about 6 million tons of we have to make up somehow quickly, and I don't think that's doable. Plus, we had the trucker strike, which is going to take all of the month of May to recover. And so I am not sure. I think there's some debate over the carryout being as low as 200,000. It could be as high as 300,000 tons. But definitely the red lentil demand coming on lately will pull heavily on the remaining stocks of reds. And so I think the majority of our stocks carried over will be green.
It's May the 5th, and we have just enjoyed and endured the coldest winter in Western Canada in 50 years, which complicated an already tough year. May 5th, we should be seeding. What are conditions like now in Saskatchewan? Are we planting today? Is seeding early? Is it going to be late?
It's been a very cold winter. We have a new term we developed this year called polar vortex, which caused some of the coldest winter conditions we've ever experienced in Saskatchewan and in Western Canada. It was cold enough to send cold blasts of air all the way down to Augusta, Georgia, and if anybody here follows the Masters, they had 6 inches of ice down there, so that's quite unusual for cold weather to go that deep into the United States. But currently in our area, we're seeing a fairly wet April, cool soil conditions, and as a result, our seeding is looking delayed. What I can say is that we can turn things around still, and we can plant a significant amount of lentils, but I think in layered lentils you have to be very careful to, in terms of getting the seeding done on time. The later we seed layers, the lower yields is typically what we expect. So we need some really good weather. We're forecasting near normal temperatures and near normal moisture for this next 7-day period. And that's about as far as forecasters can plan, I think. As the previous speaker was talking about El Nino and these things, I wish I was a climatologist and still got paid to be that wrong most of the time.
Just a reminder, last year's crop also was late planted and didn't seem to cause too much trouble. But I think Greg's point is correct that typically a later planting is negative in terms of yield potential for layered lentils. Thank you, Greg. We'll get some questions going later, but now I'd like to talk to Mr. Ballin briefly. The new normal, again, is India. and we're going to be talking about India a lot over the next couple of days. India has become a significant importer of green lentils. It's mostly focused on government purchasing in Tamil Nadu, and I guess the question I would ask is this now the new normal in terms of persistent, continuous lentil demand into South India? We've had imports by India of green lentils in the last 5 years, anywhere from 15,000 tons per year up to 150,000 tons per year. So if you look at 150,000 ton potential demand against the production figures you see up on the screen, that could be a quarter of the crop. So is this the new normal? Is India going to be continuing to import significant quantities of green lentils?
Good morning, all of you. Actually, the government is the major buyer of lentils. So if that continues, definitely India will keep buying bigger quantities. As of now, the government is in the process of extending the scheme another year or so. So if that is extended, definitely the purchases, the government will be buying more, and India will keep buying, South India will keep buying more quantities of lentils this year.
So India will keep buying lentils, thank you. And then I guess that's related to the tour market, which is Myanmar, and there's some price adjustments there. How is the tour market? What do you see happening in terms of pricing going forward?
With regard to tour, what I feel is the stocks in India are less, and the prices are also will keep increasing in future. And since the stocks are less, I feel that the prices will move up sharply.
What's interesting to me as well is that we're kind of almost forcing a product into a market through the government. And the question I keep asking, is this going to translate from government purchasing to eventual normal commercial demand? And I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I'm wondering if the demand for green lentils will move up into other parts of India, or is it going to stay confined to South India?
Right now, the lentils will move into the whole part of India, but basically it started from the south, and now in every port the lentils is being imported. And I feel if the tour prices are moving up, definitely the lentils consumption will be more, and the prices will be stable.
A good news story for Canada, to develop these kinds of markets, and it's marvelous to see. I guess the other new normal is when I started the business 30 years ago, we kept looking over our shoulder at Turkey because Turkey was the preeminent green lentil producer in the world, and now Canada is basically the sole exporter of green lentils. Of course, the U.S. Still has a large program as well, but it's all about Canada this year for the most part. Next speaker, Albert, can you talk about maybe things in North Africa and Spain and around the Mediterranean?
Hello, good morning. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about Spain. Spain, as you very well know, is a traditional consumer of green lentils. We are net importers. However, we have our own crop, which is harvested in June. Last year's crop was a record crop. I don't have the official figures, but we could say it was an approximately 30 to 35,000 tons. Most of them Lair type, and Spanish brown type was approximately between 5 to 8,000 metric tons. This record crop was mainly because of very good soil conditions during the winter, which allowed to have record yields. Don't forget that for the past 3 or 4 years, the crop has been really, really bad because of the high extreme temperatures at harvesting time. So as a result of this, Spain has not been very strong on the imports from Canada from the period, let's say, August 2013 till January, February this year, because mainly they were covered with our own production. So that's why we have seen a reduction on the activity from Canada, which has been started to show an interest from January, February on, and then suffering this logistic problem from Canada. This year crop, the surface has been increased a little bit because of the good results of last year. Right now, the conditions are a little bit dry, and we definitely need rains in the short term. So if this situation goes on, there will be definitely a new opportunity for Canada to ship new crop in early September, October.
And how about Algeria? What do you see in Algeria?
Well, to try to sum up the situation in Algeria, like most of you know, in my opinion, there are 2 or 3 reasons which can describe the present situation. One is that they are importing more quantities than what they need. This is nothing new, but this is part of their way of doing business there. Secondly, I would say that the borders to the neighboring countries have been closed for the past 1 or 2 years, so this has not helped to reduce their stocks. And I would say also that consumption has been a little bit steady or slightly down. So as a result of this, there are plenty of stocks there, and they are selling below their cost.
So what is the health financially of the Algerian importers?
Sorry, can you say that?
How is the financial health of the importers? Is it an industry that's hurting within Algeria, or is...
Well, the financial situation is pretty bad.
Is it? Yes.
They are losing money on
Yeah.
lentils.
Yeah.
Also, there's another important thing, that the clients of the big importers started to import 2-3 years ago.
Okay.
So that seems that the demand have been increased, but it's not.
So the market is becoming more fragmented.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Question that's always been in my mind this past year is green lentils are a third the price of white beans. And markets like Algeria, Spain, they're both important, Turkey. So has the relative high price of the beans convinced the housewife when she's got a package, well, let's take the lentils home for dinner this week. We'll pass on the white beans. Is there anything like that happening at the supermarket level?
In my opinion, they have replaced the high price of beans by other alternative beans like Egypt, North American Red Northerns, Madagascar, Kyrgyzstan, even with the Navy's beans in the end. But I wouldn't say they have replaced the high price beans by consuming more lentils.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Tiff, any comments from you about the Middle East, North Africa? Anything you care to disagree with? That would be the fun part, if we could have a little discussion back and forth about some points that were earlier made.
Good morning, all. It's a short notes, memory from experience. I'm glad to pass some information of what's going on Middle East, especially on green lentils. Of course, beans will never replace green lentils or any lentil. Lentil consumption is lentil consumption. But as Albert clarified, that because of some political and economical, there were some influence on the commercial trade of green lentil. Since end of 010 till today, we see that Algerian importers are importing more than what they need. And Algeria in North Africa is the biggest country importing layered, specifically number 2s. By end of 010, there were big imports and high good levels of prices. So Canada was polished and growers to grow more, but 011 and 012, we saw some slowdown in payments. We saw some less congestion in Canada and more flowing to Algeria and Middle East. And when borders were opened with Tunisia during the Tunisian problems, we all know that Algerian has sold their position to Tunisian. And when they sold their positions to Tunisia, they paid better margin because of the exchange rate of the dollar, not because of the trade itself. I mean, Algerian traders used to get LCs, get dollar at the official exchange rate, and make money more than the trade. But also, as Albert clarified, smaller local trader became importer recently. And of course, it's not an increase in demand, but it made market more complicated because big player had big stock as usual, and all of a sudden, no demand inside. And we all from outside could see why. But inside, they did not see because they are already in the mess. So layered prices in Algeria has been stable or slowed down the last few years since end of 010. The market is very active in between borders. So borders opening, border closing, politics are affecting day by day cases. For example, we take Egypt. Egypt used to take some portion of green lentil. However, Estons are layered. Estons Egyptian import, when red lentil are expensive in price, so they take some Estons to replace the Estons if price difference is there. So it's finance situation. And Egypt used also to import some layers. Why? To give to Libya, to give to Tunisia, to give to Jordan because of free treaty, no tax. But recently, 3 years ago, Tunisia opened the direct import, so Egypt cannot import the quantity to re-export to Tunisia. Libya, the Libyan guys used to bring cash, go to Egypt, put money in Alex in cash, in bags, money in bags and money in briefcases, and to pay and to load. But since the Libyan problems, of course, this is not happening. So when you look at the statistics last year and recently, you will not find Egypt barely importing green lentil. So political situation is affecting the market, but consuming is the same. But importer needs to be neat to study before they import how much is coming, what is the last year for themselves. And also, exporter should be very careful. Now no more LCs to Algeria. So the method of payments are more difficult. It will all depend on your regular trade with your regular buyer and the trust. But we come to a good question was asked by Gerald. How is the finance situation? Algeria has a lot of money. Last 2 months was a frustration because of the new election to the presidential place, which happened 2 weeks ago. And you will see money again flowing because Algeria has the money. But everybody was afraid what's going to happen. And of course, in our countries, mostly North Africa and Middle East, it's all influenced by politics. It's a presidential role and the presidential decrees with some consultancy of his cabinet. So it's affecting all the trade. So you have to watch and you have to deal with people you trust and with people whom you know. But it's the same consumption. Thank you.
Thank you, Atef. I'm going to kick it back to Greg for a minute and put him on the spot. He's very good at production. He's also a major exporter, and there's no one up here to talk about South America. Can you comment on what you see in South America from Mexico? I know it's part of North America, but from Mexico south?
Well, I think, as you know, right now, when you look at that southern hemisphere, you're starting to come into their high demand right now. And I think you have the combination of two things. Number one, our grower prices are low. And the second thing is our Canadian dollar is weak. So this has given us a pretty good boost in terms of competitive pricing. So all the way down West Coast South America on the layered and Eston demand side, we have good supply, good quality, and solid demand, as we can always depend on that region. It's a staple for them, and we can always rely on those markets to pull stocks as usual. Small green production into Mexico. We've seen really good demand and continues to buy right into the summer months. I think, again, largely because people recognize that the color is very green, which is important for especially the Mexican market. The quality is excellent, and the price is pretty hard to beat right now. Mm-hmm. So Canada's on sale for a top quality product. That's the bottom line for that region.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. We've gone around the horn, and I'd like to open up for some questions. I'm sure that there are some questions in the audience, so I don't know, do we have a microphone set up and we can, yes, here we go. Price predictions was asked for, so any idea on pricing? Who wants to go first?
I would say high 600, low 700 for layered. And for Eston, $30, $40 cheaper. This is just my expectation, if crop will not be huge.
Too early to tell, to be honest. We're just getting to planting, and so all things be equal, that's a good starter, a T for valuation. But we have no idea what the outcome will be of this next 3 months. We're starting late. If we have a normal hot July, production will be at best normal for layers, and against this basically static production area, I think layered prices can go up. That's my personal opinion. How much, that would all depend on the overall conditions and how the harvest develops. But when we can't expect every year in Canada to have a number 2 or better crop all the way through. So it'd be more normal to have a bigger distribution of qualities, and in that case, then your number 1 layered would have to go up significantly in price. I think the other concern we have to keep in mind is calibers as well. This last year, the size of the layered was very small because of the extra rain. And so we end up with fairly good discounts going down to smaller sized layered lentils. So the larger caliber was premium this year, so we'll be watching that as well. So it's, I think, anybody's guess right now on prices. Today, myself, I'm pretty bullish on the value for layered going forward for those reasons.
I don't dare to give any figure, so Dakar, I know you like it. In my opinion, India will be determinant. Their demand will determine where the market should go on the short and medium term.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, I feel the low would be 600 for the layered, and the high would be 650, 675.
So what I'm hearing from everyone is that current valuations represent good value. And as Greg mentioned, the quality of last year was just like a good Camus. I mean, a beautiful red wine. It was a very good quality lentil that we produced in Canada last year. And we're all trying to forget 2010. I'm sorry I mentioned it again, but just a few years ago, we produced a horrible quality crop. So 2013 was very special. We are going to reduce green lentil acres relative to red. There's no question of that. Farmers have made a choice. It's not an easy switch, but they will make the decision to plant more red, less green lentils this year. If we revert to a trend yield, then we're going to have a lower production than we had this past year. Next question. The earlier speaker talked about the El Nino as causing wonderful crops in North America. So I'm sure that will terrify our railroads when we tell them that we're going to produce another large crop. Any other questions? I can't believe that no one has something to add to the discussion. Gordon, you must have some comments for us. Can we get him a moment? While we're passing the microphone, I have to give credit to Stat Publishing, who let me use the figures here, and also a pat on the back to the Saskatchewan Pulse Crop Board, who have financed research for many, many years. They took a brave and courageous decision many, many years ago, and you should all know that every grower participates and supports research in Canada for new varieties, and you see it here now, where in so many pulse products that Canada produces, we've become a dominant and significant player in the marketplace. So hats off to the producers in Canada.
Well, I'll address my question to both Gerald and Greg, and the question that, of course, has been a major topic around the world has been the transportation issue. So I think forecasting production and prices is part of it, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on logistics and reliability going forward. Government in Canada has taken some action. There's been endless discussion in Canada about the transportation issue. Given what you've heard and what you see, what's your forecast as to this moving forward? And more of the same, improvements, unknown? I'd be interested. Gerald, why don't we start with your thoughts on that?
You know, clearly the railroad was challenged this past year with the size of the crop. They were overwhelmed by the crop. Everything in Canada was perfect till about February the 3rd, and then the wheels figuratively fell off. And the government has forced the railroads to have certain delivery commitments. The railroads are very frustrated by that, as are other industries. You know, the potash shippers, the coal shippers don't appreciate the government of Canada telling the railroads that you have to use your locomotives to pull grain and not these other products. The special crop uses, what we're doing here is a relatively small segment of the Canadian grain business, and so our demand for freight, it's important to us, but in the overall scheme of things, when you put it up against wheat and canola, it's not that significant. And so if the railroads are forced to move tonnage, they're going to go after the easiest tonnage. And so they're going to service Alberta first because it's closest to tidewater. They're going to service the large elevators who can load 112 cars. So what the government of Canada has done hasn't, I believe, necessarily helped the special crop industry all that much. It had to be done politically. There was a lot of pressure to make a move, but there's a lot of competition for the freight that wants to move, and we're not the only buyer of the freight. And so it's not a quick fix, and I think the worst is behind us, but we're not going to get back to the old normal, I don't believe. Greg?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, there's been a lack of investment, I think, in infrastructure in Canada towards the overall commitment to move grain, especially in the corridor to Vancouver. We're capped out around 34 million metric tons. We definitely need to have a policy and a vision to expand our capacity, so that's a given. I would say that in the short term, this next year, CP Rail has reduced its assets. If you take it's a matter of public record since mid-2012. They've taken and laid off several thousand employees. I believe the figure was 4,500. There was 400 less locomotives available, and they also took 11,000 rail cars off the rails. So the railroad is committed to value to its shareholders and not committed necessarily to expanding production of grain movement. So I think that everybody ought to be concerned about that we do have a limited amount of freight available, especially the hopper car freight. I don't believe that the railroads were honest in saying that it was a winter problem. We have winter in Canada every year, and this is not a new phenomenon. It's strictly a a restriction of assets in order to drive value to the consumer or to the shareholder. Also, oil is more profitable. So I think that one of the concerns I'd have is what will be the cost of the freight going forward to truly incentivize the railroads. I don't like to see regulation as a means to move our freight. I would rather see markets move the freight. And so it'd be nice to see some form of a system where if the railroads perform well, then there could be some kind of a bonus towards them. But it is, I do think, a matter of money. There have been, as Gordon mentioned, Pulse Canada has been working really hard to make changes to the Act. And there is a new bill, C-52, which is available for small shippers to access. And there are amendments to the Transportation Act going on. So I think that is probably one of the major things that we are concerned as an exporter is firm freight. How can you trade when you don't have the reliability of the railroad behind us? So this is a significant issue. We are working harder for other alternatives in source-loaded containers, so we have been able to overcome the problem of cabotage for the use of 40-foot containers. So now we are using 40-foot containers and loading them at the global hub in Regina. So that's helped us give cube for westbound movements. We are seeing bigger commitments by the railroads to move 20-foot containers into Regina as well. So there is more source-loaded containers, although not as competitive as moving by boxcar or hopper car to West Coast or East Coast. Intermodal movements are, I think, going to remain static. The same story in the intermodal cube supply. I was speaking to one of the senior managers in CP Rail, and they've also reduced the number of intermodals available in the fleet, and so as a result, we've been short of supply cube there as well. So for the audience here, I think really I would take a look at Canada as this large production base limited by what we can get down this bandwidth of limited cube, especially in the peak demand periods, which are always going to be in August, September, October, November, and then usually it wanes in December for the Christmas period.
Bottom line is the pinch point isn't production, it's going to be freight. And so we can look at the S&Ds, but the reality is the logistics are a significant component of what we're able to do to service our clientele around the world.
I just add that the railroads would like to see us have more leveled movement, and I think that one of the things that I've been proud of is in Canada is our market has developed and matured to the point now where we are seeing month in and month out demand. I think this really helps us a lot. At least that's our experience, and I think, Gerald, you could probably comment on that as well, but I think we're starting to see year-round demand. I think with Ramadan being in July as well, we're seeing extraordinary demand leading up to Ramadan, so that's a moving marker as well. But definitely I think with India's population growth, and I think that there's going to be always a deficit there, and that's growing. And Canada will definitely be a big part of supplying that, as will be the Middle East. Yeah. As our red lentil production is pretty hard to beat, and you take a look at the numbers going into Turkey right now in both green and red lentils. As you mentioned, when we first started this business, Gerald, Turkey was our major competitor in green lentils. Yeah. And now we've overtaken that market. I do suspect that we'll continue to see significant advances in agronomics for both greens and reds. I'm talking in the range of 10 to 20% increase in yield coming down the pipeline. Working with Dr. Bert Vandenberg, we have some phenomenal advances coming in agronomics by the use of genomics. And again, if you combine the advanced technology of superior variety development in Canada with good agricultural mechanical equipment being used now, it's becoming rather sophisticated and large. If you ever come to Saskatchewan, you're all welcome. We can give you a tour of our equipment. You wouldn't believe the sprayers we have now have become probably the number one tool on the farm 120-foot wide 4x4 sprayers that can fly through fields at 20 miles an hour and cover vast territories in a hurry. Combines that are GPS guided and auto steer, and then throw in some good weather, and we can turn out some good quality and good production going forward.
And just one quick comment maybe from Greg or anyone else that would care to comment. When I first started the business, production of lentils was in Manitoba all the way to Alberta. We've kind of lost Alberta to a large degree. Manitoba is shut down. Research and development is huge, and soybeans are coming on fast. And we're seeing lentil ground. They've had some challenges with production in recent years, and soybean production is going to ramp up in Saskatchewan, starting from the southeast corner and moving across the province. And I think that is a threat eventually to lentil production. Would you agree, Greg?
Yeah, definitely. We saw 100,000 acres last year in Saskatchewan. Bert Vandenberg calls it a $10 million experiment that failed. But that was, I think an anomaly last year, the wet, cool conditions. But I think under normal conditions and advancements of in agronomics, we're going to see soybeans coming in, and that is going to be a threat to us in lentils. So the challenge is on in a couple of ways. We're going to have to see significant increases in yield of lentil varieties in order to be competitive. There's no doubt that the majority of the world is price sensitive. Some 4 billion people around the world make $4 a day or less. So there's not a lot of room for that part of the world to pay more for vegetable protein. So I think that this is the challenge for not just us in Canada, but I think for this particular group here is that in lentils, if we're going to continue to be sustainable, we have to be competitive, and we have to invest. We're definitely doing that in Saskatchewan and seeing great advancements, and hopefully that will continue. I don't see why not.
We have time for a couple more questions before we break for lunch. Yes? I'm not sure if there's a microphone being passed around. We should probably get you on a mic there. There it is.
Yeah, I'm Tim McGreevy with the USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council. Just wanted to give a short report on the U.S. situation right now. Actually, the USDA is projecting that acreage for lentils will be down between 10 and 12%. That prediction was made in March. Since that time, talking to many of the growers in the United States, we feel probably that number will probably come up a little bit due to, or at least potentially come up due to maybe a shortage of getting fertilizer into the farms. And maybe we'll see a little bit more lentil production. As was explained on the Canadian provinces, the lentil production moving from Manitoba and going west, that is certainly happening in the United States as well. And we see incredible potential growth in the state of Montana, which is, of course, just right under Saskatchewan. And we expect to have increased acreage there for the next several years. So right now, projecting about 320,000 acres going in. I will say for those friends in Spain and others who use Pardina lentils, we probably will see a reduction in Pardina lentils in the west. Good news is the lentils are in the ground in Washington and Idaho and the west coast, pretty much about 70% seeded. They got an early start to the production season. Montana and North Dakota are just now starting to look at turning some wheels. So we're optimistic that we'll have a good harvest this year. They certainly have some soil moisture in the ground to work with if they can just stop snowing. And in terms of the rail situation, I don't know if it's worse or better in the United States, but we are getting some Canadian product coming down trying to get on U.S. railroads. So maybe that's an indication, but it's bad anywhere you go. Transportation is going to be a problem for us over the next couple of years until we work that out or we stop buying oil. There's two options for you right there. So anyway, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tim. Good comments. Food aid in the U.S. It's all on U.S. peas at the moment. Is that balance going to stay that way, or is there ever a chance to get back on with I mean, the American government's a huge buyer of pulses for food aid, but it's predominantly peas. Is that the way it's going to be?
Well, we actually have been working on a program to encourage them to purchase more lentils, because we certainly have a lot of those in storage right now. And we've seen a little bit of an uptick in lentil purchases, but the consumers are really like yellow peas, and especially split yellow peas. And I don't see them going away from that. They are yellow peas are also competitively priced, but they can get some good buys on lentils as well.
Thanks, Tim. Any other questions? All I can see is bright lights. I can't see the hands being raised. Is there a hand up there? All right, well, I'd like to thank the panel for joining us today. I mentioned that after this session is lunch, and I'm in error, so no lunch for you just yet. There's another presentation following this one. So thanks, everyone, for joining us today.